Okay. So the first thing is, good morning, everyone, and
Morning.
thanks for joining. So, how many of you are there in this? Total around 9 people, correct? Fine. So let's see what you've learned so far in the last class. So this is just we don't need to go into again and again. I just want to know about what you've learned on day 1 and day 2. So in day 1, we learned about cloud computing. What do you mean by cloud computing, guys? What do you mean by cloud computing?
The delivery of computing service over the internet.
Very good, very good. It can be anything. It can be your database, it can be your storage, it can be your virtual machine, compute, or anything else. You have to ensure that you will get into your portal.azure.com wherever you're sitting and you do the cloud computing, right? And what is the types of cloud you have? Public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid.
Hybrid.
So we learned about that, and we have started with why we have to use, let's say, when it comes to high availability, what is high availability? When it comes to your high availability is like, guys, who is that? Mute yourself. I'm getting a lots of disturbance, guys, in the back end. So when it comes to high availability, when it comes to scalability, you have scalability 2 types. What is that? Horizontal and vertical scaling. So we have spoken about that, and we have just went to the module 1 of identity, right? So in that first, we have spoken about the Azure Active Directory. So when it comes to Azure Active Directory, it is as a identity solutions, right? And it provides lots of features like MFA, privileged identity management, conditional policies, self-service password reset, identity protection, defender for identity. So many things Azure is giving, and in order to implement those things, you need to have a P1, P2 licenses, right? And types of users, we have 3 types. One is cloud identities, guest users, and directory sync users. So when it comes to cloud identities, the users who exist in the Azure Active Directory, right? User reside in the Entra ID and the authentication will take place in Entra ID itself. Guest user, this user exists outside. That means your vendor, and the authentication will take place from the external identity, right? When it comes to your directory sync, that is users sync from the on-prem environment where you want to install the Microsoft Entra, and the on-premises user, when you bring to Azure, they will access the portal. They do the administration, plus they will access the SaaS-based applications using the single sign-on, where the ID has been created in the on-premises environment, right? Fine. So this is what we discussed on the day. Users and groups. We have types of users, like let's say groups. We have security groups. We have your Microsoft 365 groups. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So when it comes to your on-prem environment, you have kind of environment like this. When it comes to your Azure, the environment is like this, right? And we have spoken about the scalability. Guys, if you have not mute yourself, for sure, this will impact your recordings. I request everyone. I don't know how the noise is coming when you unmute also, whether you're getting noise from my end. No, because I'm responsible for this training, right? So take some responsibility, guys. So this is how one tenant is equal to multiple subscription, one subscription is equal to only one tenant. That's the association ground rule, right? Now, when it comes to your service, when it comes to your, let's say the ID roles, if by default, Microsoft will give you a primary domain, which is a functioning domain. So at any given point of time, I cannot use Microsoft has a domain register because they are point to domain. So I have to bring my custom domain from the domain register, either from the GoDaddy or the BigRock or the Hostinger, right? So when it comes to your on-premises, how are you going to bring the users through the AD Connect? How are you going to sync the users? Not only that, users will have single sign-on and they will access through the Entra Connect. The users were created in the on-premises, it will get synced to your Azure Active Directory or Entra ID, right? Fine. So today we are going to talk about something called as the module 2. I'm going with the standard one, guys. Okay, so it won't create any problem. So when it comes to administrate governance and compliance. So this is what our topic today. So when it comes to your governance and compliance, so first thing is when your company, take an example, when your company is moving to Azure. So as a first step, what do you have to do, guys? You need to obtain a subscription, Azure subscription. So you are responsible for obtaining your subscription, Azure subscription for your company. And you're also responsible for effective management of cost, right? So when it comes to your governance and compliance, so the name itself, it says, how are you going to determine the correct regions for your locate your Azure resources? You have to identify the use cases for your Azure subscription, identify how to obtain a subscription. So those things we are going to talk about here. When it comes to your governance, we are going to talk about what is Azure subscription, what is Azure policy, what is your role-based access control. So we are going to talk about this today, and followed by your a small just a topic where how you can use PowerShell, how can you use CLI, and how are you going to use your portal. So these are the topics today. So now when it comes to your configure subscription and resource manager resources. So we're going to talk about all this today. How are you going to identify the regions? What is this Azure subscription? Identify the subscription usage, obtain a subscription, resource groups, service limits and quotas, and the hierarchy and the resource tagging and manage cost. So these are the subtopic we are going to talk about today, and ensure that the first module and second module, you get around 20 to 25% of questions. So when it comes to region, see, Microsoft Azure is made up of data centers, correct? A collection of data centers. So now these data centers are organized, made available to end users. That's the concept, right? See, for example, let's get into the whiteboard. So regions. Let's give me 1 minute. I'll close the window. Okay. So I hope the voice is clear now, because yes. Now when it comes to region, basically Azure has multiple regions. Take an example. I'm going to use one of the region called East US. East US. East US. So when it comes to East US, there is one called regions. So when it comes to regions, you have n number of regions. Azure regions. you have lots of regions when it comes to, you can see China, West US, Malaysia, you have Italy, you have your Spain, Poland. These all the explore the new latest news for Azure data center regions. They are going to bring the this kind of regions again. So there is something called as geographics. Explore the Microsoft data centers. See, it will be same thing like your on-premises. In the backend, Azure gives you the data center and you virtually you connect to the data center. And you can see all these are a data center, right? So when it comes to all the data center, it is connected to, like, let's say, everything is interconnected. If you see here, there's India here. Explore this whenever you have a free time, right? So you can see the disaster recovery options, sustain features, availability zone presence, right? So basically, when it comes to your, this is light mode, this is dark mode. So if you see, everything is interconnected, right? So when it comes to your Azure, basically the regions it has. So now take an example of Azure East to West region. So in this East to West, there will be 3 availability zones. 1, 2, and 3. Now let's consider availability zone 1. We're going to talk about this in a detailed in our module 8 also. Now availability zone 1, let's say this region will have availability zone 2 and availability zone 3. Every region will have zones, but some of the regions are not there, so that you have to plan. The idea behind here is, this is my East to West, and in the East to West, you have 3 availability zones. So these 3 availability zones are interconnected, and this is far away from each other. So this is interconnected in terms of low latency. Low latency means very fast, right? The network is connected, interconnected, and this is an approximate 300 miles radius away from each other. What is the purpose of away from each other? Basically, when it comes to your data center, right? So always remember that when Microsoft says, okay, see, availability zone is far away from your availability zone 2 and availability zone 3. Now, when it comes to availability zone, here you have data centers. Let's say, so let's say like this, you have multiple buildings in each region. So let's say Azure is placed a data center here like this. They will place like this in the data center availability zone and the data center 3. Now, these all are interconnected. Now, when it comes to availability zone, let's take an example. Your application is hosted in East to West. Take an example. Application is hosted on East to West. So the purpose of the availability zone is, you're going to keep the machines here. You're going to keep the application here. You're going to keep the application here. You're going to keep the application here. Now, the idea behind here is, something goes wrong. Let's say some disaster happened in East to West, let's say with availability zone 1. Now, unfortunately, my data center 1 is unavailable, but my application will run, because what happens here is, my data center is far away from availability zone 1, availability zone 2 is available, and meantime availability zone 3 is available. But when you think when you take an example, when it comes to zone 2, take an example, this particular zone went out. Now the purpose is here is 2 availability zone is down, no problem, because my availability zone 3 is working and I have a high availability, correct? So this kind of things is called what? HA cluster, high availability cluster. But when you think all the 3 zones goes down, that means if my region east to west, right? If this goes down, what happens, guys? If this goes down, now the entire 3 availability zone goes down, correct? And your application will be down again. Do you accept this, guys? Correct? Correct, guys?
Yes.
So that's why
Yeah.
you have to plan before we get into the actual regions. So okay, this kind of environment is there. Okay, if what happens if my if something occurs, like let's say earthquake or natural disaster like tsunami or stuff. That's why my ability zone is 1 is far away from ability zone 2. Let's say something happened, tsunami happened, either 1 goes down, no problem, the 2 is available. In the rare case, you have something called as region goes down, right? It's a rare case, right? So Azure, important points, things to know about regions. So what is that? First thing is, as you know, Azure has more global regions than any other cloud providers, because they have a very big environment. Wherever you go, for example, Denmark, okay, Azure data center is there. Wherever you go, Finland, okay, Azure data center is there, right? So regions provide what? Customers the flexibility and scale needed to bring applications. That's what it needs, right? Closer to their users. Yeah, my users are in east to west, so I'll place the application in that particular region, right? So some regions preserves something called as data residency. What is that? Data residency. So when it comes to data residency, and it offers comprehensive compliance and resiliency. That means your high availability options for customers. Take an example. As you know that Microsoft is a US based company, correct? So when it comes to US based, what they do is they preserve that particular region. That means your US government, let's say defense, you have something called a defense, right? A defense for example, you have Azure, US government, where they'll use these regions to preserve the data residency. That means that particular regions will not be disclosed to anyone because of compliance, right? And US government at any given point of time, you cannot see in the portal, right? And some services or let's say virtual machines features are only available in certain regions, such as specific virtual machine sizes. Sometimes what happens is you will select some sizes, but it is region specific. Some sizes will not be available, or let's say a storage type. So that's why you have to be very well aware. Okay, if I'm selecting this region, okay, so some of the things I need to keep in mind that okay, this region has this, right? So that's you have to understand. And finally, we have some of the let's say some of your global Azure regions or services, right, that do not require to select a region. See, whenever you implement, right, anything, you'll implement on top of the regions only, right? But some of the regions where some of the services do not request for, or what we can say more precise, do not require to select a regions. What is that, guys? The services are, have we selected Azure Active Directory? Microsoft Entra. Did we select any regions? No, right? There is something called as Traffic Manager and Azure DNS. So these are the services where you don't require a regions. You don't need to specify it because it's a global regions. Even when it comes to your friend there also, friend door is a global region again. So always in this case, if my region 1 goes down, East US. So what Microsoft says is no problem. No problem. Each Azure regions is paid. That means if my East US goes down, it will paid with another region for what? Disaster recovery with the same geography. Together makes what, guys? A regional peering. We'll discuss about what is the regional peering, what is peering, and other stuff. So ensure that when you think about the Azure regions, you have to plan all this, right? So that's what it comes to your here. So when it comes to your regions specify represent a collection of data centers, flexible, provides flexibility and scalable. It worldwide there are around 60 plus regions representing 140 countries, and it preserves data residency, especially for your Azure government. I don't disclose the defense, right? Select regions close to your users. Be aware of region deployment availability. Some of the regions where your availability sets, availability zones are not there, and there are global regions that are region independent, like your Active Directory, like your traffic management. Those are global services. Most regions are paired for high availability. If one goes down, I paired for another region where I will use for disaster recovery. So when it comes to region, so always ensure that this is the hierarchy you follow. Do not forget. Okay. So first thing is what you do, you have your, like this, guys, you have your account. Once you log in with the account, you'll use something called as, let's say, region. You have something called as what? You have Azure subscription. Azure subscriptions. You have something called as resource groups. And you have something called as resources. So this is a standard one where you have to follow an hierarchy. So when it comes to your Azure, first you need to select the thing. When you say resource, right, it is nothing but your virtual machine storage. So example is virtual machines, your storage, right? Now, when it comes to the Azure account, so you'll have the account, you'll have Azure account. Azure account is connected to your tenant. The account is nothing but your tenant, guys. Okay. So account is nothing but like this. When it comes to this way account or here enter ID connected with your account, and it will connect to your subscription. When it comes to subscription, it inherits all the resource groups, resources, right? So now, when you implement subscription, what is this subscription is all about? Let's get into that. This diagram looks good, that's why. Implement Azure subscription. Now, when it comes to subscription, what is the subscription is all about? The one which is it is a logical unit of Azure services, right? That is linked to a to an Azure account. And also billing for Azure services. Let's take an example. You've taken a postpaid connection, but you have to see the board, right, where I have to pay the bill. But same thing, if I want to implement all the services, where I will pay the bill? I'll pay the bill. Billing for Azure services is done, right, on a per subscription basis. So let's say I have a 3 subscription here. So I have how many billing, guys? I'll have 3 billings here because each subscription is associated with the tenant. So as you know that one tenant is equal to multiple subscription. Do not forget this. So one subscription is equal to only one tenant. So when it comes to your Active Directory, whenever someone says an account, right, that is nothing but your guys. That is nothing but your Entra ID. And we say something called as in this one. So it will be connected to my multiple subscription. Because why? Because I want to make sure that the cost center is different. Because my company wants to know what is the cost for my what is the cost for my development subscription, what is the bill for this, because I cannot use that with my test subscription, and I cannot implement something called as a big machine on the test subscription, because they're using for what? Billing purpose. They want to know, okay, what is my production subscription, what is my dev subscription, what is the cost of that. So this will help you how to control the resource usage, right? Right? So when it comes to note subscriptions, helps you organize, correct? So when we say organize access to cloud resources, make sense? Cloud service resources. That means this will help me to control, right? This will help me. In other words, this will also help, right? You control how resource usage, because I'll come to know and is reported build. So whenever I use the subscription, I know what is the usage of my subscription, and I'll put a subscription. Okay, this is what my target, my budget for this production, or a dev subscription, because we will not keep anything on the production. Production is for production environment, but I will not restrict the production environment, because this is very important in the production environment, right? But when it comes to your dev environment, yes, I will put some budget here. I'll not keep something, let's say, I'll not keep anything restriction for production, but restriction for your subscription, like your dev subscription and test subscription, right? So when you're implementing your subscription, you have to plan it, right? Now, when it comes to subscription, what is a subscription, guys? Subscription is basically a logical unit of your Azure that are linked to your Azure account. Services. What do you mean by services, guys? It can be your function app, it can be your virtual machine, it can be your database, it can be your app services that are linked to your subscription. Without subscription, I cannot create any of the resources. Same thing like your Netflix. You have your Gmail account. The moment you log into Netflix without a subscription, you cannot watch the movies. And you're going to pay the bill as per the usage, right? Monthly, and you'll do the standard instruction where monthly once the billing comes, and if you have a standard instruction, it will go from your credit card, correct? So only identifies in the Entra ID or a directory that is trusted by Entra ID can create a subscription, right? You might have seen the flow. Where's the flow, guys? This is the flow. So account is created, tenant Active Directory is free, subscription is selected, right? And then you will create more users in the tenant. You're going to give the resources access to the tenant. Simple, right? So that's what we are seeing that are linked to your directory. And why we use to get a billing as well. Security and billing boundary. If I want to implement any services, I'm going to implement based on my subscription usage. I'm going to implement on the test subscription. If it is for test subscription, if it is a production, then I'm going to implement on the production. For example, this is my horizontal scaling. This is my app services, function app, your SQL databases. I can implement those things on the production environment. I will not worry about the costing, because costing is for production, you have to take care. Only thing is you have to optimize how are you going to use the environment, right? Now, when it comes to subscription usage, this is very important, because see, whenever you take a Netflix, Netflix will give you kind of subscription. Okay, you want to do it in the mobile, you want to see in the mobile, and how many devices you want to connect, how many TV you want to connect. So you have to make sure that based on the selection, the usage will be there, that costing will be there, correct? Do you agree with that? In Azure also, you have kind of subscription. So when it comes to subscription, you have something called as free subscription. Let's say, for example, you guys can create a free subscription because you don't have lab environment. Nobody, I think institute will not give you a pass or something like that. So what you have to do is create an account based, just create one small account. Okay. And what you do is go to the Azure portal. Take an example. This creation is one of the difficult now, right? Let's say outlook.com. Let's say back to new outlook.com. So what you do basically, guys, you create a outlook.com. So create a outlook.com in the real time. Let's say Raghavendra. So if I create like this, say, take an example, I'm creating like this. So this is another a big problem here, right? And this is another issue, as you know, right? This is little easy. So whenever you log in, what Azure is giving, guys? So why it has taken? Because I think because I've given for data age, right? So age I've given less age, right? So that's why. So, say, February. Okay, this is little good, a little easy, right? And compared to the last week, which we have struggled, right? So which is there one? Not this, not this. Okay. I think this is the one, right? This is the one. Okay, let me, I think not this, right? Making confused here. Nowhere it is there. Okay. Even symbols are not correct. Where should I know it will not come. So this is one more retake. See, it will keep increasing. I don't want to. So let's say if I sign in into something account, take an example. Any ID you log in. Example, this one. So when you log in, approve it. So the moment I log in, I know that I have an account, correct? And once I log into the portal and I'll go for free trial. So Azure free trial. Free trial. So the moment I go to the free account, the moment I create an account, I log in with that free account and I'll start with start free. So now today, what you do is you create an account and sign up with your free account, whatever the account you create, right? You create that and you can make use of that, right? So give me 1 minute, guys. Okay. So log in with any ID. For example, if you have any Gmail account or whatever, let's say, for example, I have an account, AWS, DevApps, 820. So let's take an example. I have this account. I think it's not, I don't know which account I have to use it. Yeah. Okay, so it is created. Now, when I log in, so what I have to do is, so I think, okay. Because I've given the option, right? It's okay. I cannot use that. So once you log in with the ID, right? And you can click on the free trial. So once you enter the free trial, what you do, you will have 12 months of free trial and you'll get $200. You'll get $200 and you will have popular services free for 12 months. 1255 services you get and you'll get a $200, right? Unfortunately, I cannot do because I already have a pay as you go and I cannot create account as you know the problem. So it will take a lot of time. Pay as you go. This will charges you monthly. So to practice your lab, right, you can go with free account and enter your credit card number and you'll get $200. And first 30 days, you'll have $200 and then you have to pay as you go. There is someone called CSP. There is someone called CSP. What is a CSP? Agreement with possible discounts through your Microsoft Solutions provider, typically for small and medium scale industry. So let's say if I want to make sure that if I want a small business, if I want to run a small or medium scale medium scale business, so I can connect with my CSP, right? That's called cloud solution partner, where they will provide you the subscription. And there is something called as enterprise. You might have worked in a large company called Microsoft or Wipro or IBM or Tech Mahindra or HCL. So those guys, they'll use something called as enterprise agreement. So that means it is called EA. Those people, they use one agreement that's called enterprise agreement with discount for new licenses, software assurance targeted for large scale organizations like Wipro, like HCL, like Tech Mahindra. So like that, you have a big organizations and some students where they'll include $100 for 12 months. So if they are, if some organizations are tied with Microsoft, okay, some colleges, right? So what they'll do, the students will get around $100 per month, and they have to verify with their student access. How you can obtain a subscription? How you can get a subscription? So either from the reseller, either from the partners, or you will get from the personal free account, or there is something called as EA. Customers make an upfront payment that like a big organization like Wipro, right? Your IBM. So what they do is they will pay some amount for upfront and they'll get a enterprise agreement. Customers makes an upfront monetary commitment and consume services throughout the year, right? Reseller provides a simple, flexible way to purchase your cloud services. That also I can purchase from the reseller. Also, I can purchase from the partners. For some organization, they will depend on the partner. For example, they will request for setup. These partners will come design and implement your Azure, and they'll go off. And personal free account. So when it comes to your enterprise agreement, let's take an example. Let's say this is $1,200 example, guys, per year. Now, customer, if we go pay something like $800, they'll get $400 way off, and they'll get the same machine, right? In terms of your enterprise agreement, but they have to pay something upfront payment, right? Pay some amount, you get a very good discount, right? So once you have the subscription, what do you do with the subscription, guys? So you might have seen this diagram. I have my Azure account, then I'll select the regions, then I'll have my subscription. Then subscription, you have something called a resource group. What is this resource group does is, let's say, you have your Azure account. That means subscription. Now, once you select the subscription, let's say you want to deploy a virtual machine. What do? You select the subscription and you will select something called as resource groups here. let's say in the subscription, I can have, let's say one resource group. Let's take an example. I have only one resource group. Now, during the creation of your resource group, you have to name the resource group. Let's say this is my resource group. What you have to do, you have to name the resource group. Let's say name is so, and you have to enter a location. So name is, let's take an example, prod-rg. And location, let's take an example of East US. Now, when I create a name, you cannot rename once resource group is created. So you have to ensure that you have to give a specific name. No Guru, no Raghavendra, I have created and no, it's not like that. You have to plan it. No human error here, no negligency. You have to plan accordingly. I cannot go and just simply name that and later I will think about rename. Then you have to pay with the end of the bill, like, because you cannot rename anything in the Azure, right? So the purpose of this region here to store the metadata. What is that? To store the metadata. Now, what is the purpose of resource group? Let's say the resource group is, the purpose is, what is the purpose, guys? To implement your resources. That means resources, like let's say example, virtual machine, VM, storage, databases, right? Are can be deployed or are deployed to any new or existing resource group. What is the point of resource group? Yes, I will select the resource group. I will implement my resources and it will reside in the resource group, right? Correct? So now it's very important. Whenever I'm implementing my resources, the resources should be part of resource group, right? And if I delete this resource group, if I delete this resource group, please give me 1 minute. So what happens if I get deleted that resource group? So I will face some challenge. What is that? Whatever the resources you have, right, that will get deleted. That's the purpose of your resource group. You have to ensure that you know that if I delete the resource group, right, what it does, it deletes all the resource groups. That means whatever the resources I have implemented on the resource group, like let's say virtual machine storage, right, or let's say any resources. If I delete this resource group, it will delete all the resources. So that's why you have to plan accordingly. What happens if I delete, right? What happens if I delete, right? Give me 1 minute here. Guys, give me 1 minute. Okay. So what happens here? If I delete the resource group, it will delete all the resources. So in order to avoid deletion, what you will do, guys? In order to avoid the deletion, implement something called as resource lock. So in order to implement, for example, if I want to implement this resource, so once I want to avoid, so what I'll do, I'll implement the lock. So the moment I implement the lock, so lock will be at subscription level. If I put a lock at the subscription level, let's say I'll just mention here. So lock at subscription level. So if I put a subscription level, what happens, guys? It will inherit resource group level and resource level. Make sense, guys? Inherit resource group level and resources. So let's say someone is trying to delete the resource group, but my lock is at the subscription level. He cannot delete any resources on Azure. So take an example. If I want to ensure that, I want to make sure that, so let's say this is under test subscription. Now I want to move this a production subscription here. Take an example, my test subscription is no more. So what I'll do is I will go for a new resource group. And I will move the resources from one RG to another RG. RG is nothing but resource group. Right? Got it? So now what happens if I move to, let's say this is my production subscription. Now the moment I move the subscription, that means from one resource group to another resource group. So what happens, guys, here? What happens? So when I move the subscription from one resource group to another one, right? So when I move from one RG to another RG, the identity tags gets updated. That means, let's take an example. I stay in Bangalore. Okay, I stay in Ramurthy Nagar. I stay in a service apartment. I mean, it's an apartment. Now, can I move the apartment from Bangalore to Mumbai? It is not possible, right? So what I do is, let's say from Raghavendra to someone else, I will sell it. But my resources, which is my apartment, resides in Ramurthy Nagar until unless there is some earthquake or something happen. Correct? So when I'm moving my resource from one resource group to other resource group, my identity tags gets updated, but resources will be running in their own data center. Correct? So you're moving the resources. That means you're changing the resource group, one resource group to another one. Right? So only identity tags will get updated. Right? But somehow ensure that you keep a note, very important. some of the services like firewall, VPG or VNG or VPN, gateway, backup, or resource groups dependent. So you cannot move the resources unless you deassociate. So that's why you have to plan accordingly. Okay, my backup is running on the virtual machine. Okay, I cannot go and move the resources. So that's why you have to plan accordingly. But in this case, you will go with the firewall, you will disassociate the firewall, then you'll go to the VNG, it's all a big thing. But it's a rare case where you move the resources, but you have an option, right? So resources can exist only in one resource group. That means, again, the rule same thing. If my virtual machine is under one resource group, so it will be under the same resource group. It cannot be a multiple resource group, right? And groups can have resources. Groups can have resources, many different types of services from many different regions. For example, let's say I have a resource group. I have, just give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. So once you have the resources, it should be part of your, let's say, for example, let's say I have my resource group, correct? Let's say this is my resource group. Now, resource group will have location, correct? To store the metadata, nothing else. Now, I can have my resources. Let's say my resources is one is running in East US, my resource is running in West US, my resource is running in Central US. Let's say this is my virtual machine. Let me take icon. So let's say my virtual machine is running in East US. I can run in East US. Now my let's say my storage is running in, let's say some service. So let's say storage. And let's say something else is running in one more region. Now, this is running in, let's say, West US. This is running in Central US. This is running in Germany, example. Now, all these resources are associated with my resource group. You can associate, it's your wish. You can associate, right? So what happened if I delete this resource group? If I delete this resource group, all the resources like West US, Central US, Germany will get deleted. Make sense? And to avoid this, you can implement a resource lock. Okay? At subscription level or resource group level or resource level. Subscription level, it inheritance resource group level. But if I want to implement at the resource group level, you can implement. So only that resource group will not get deleted. If I put resource lock at the resource level, then only that resource cannot be deleted like that. That's it. Okay. So this was the resource group. We're going to see when we do the lab. Groups cannot be renamed or nested. You cannot put two nested groups. No, it's not possible. You can move between resources group, but you have restriction. Firewall is running, backup is running, my VPN is connected. So you cannot move the resource unless you disassociate. And there is something called as service limits. So let's say I want to implement some machines under my subscription. Now, all of a sudden you get a quota error. That means, for example, this region, total CPU is 21% used. So if it reaches 60%, you get something called as red here. So what you can do is, you can request resources have a default limit, a subscription quota. So what you do is, this particular, on the subscription, you can see the usage and quotas. This will helpful to track current usage and plan for future usage. Let's take an example. This is on red color, 80 used. Now you can open a free ticket here. You can open a free support ticket to Microsoft to increase the limits and publish maximum. So what they do is, from the Microsoft end, they will increase the limit and you can start using it. So the moment they increase the limit, they're not going to charge you. What they do is, they will, unless you start using it, they will bill for it. They will not bill for your open case. Let's say I'll tell Microsoft, please increase to 100 again. So Microsoft will increase the quota, but till you use that particular service, it will not get billed. Okay. Now something called as hierarchy. So let's take an example. You are working for a company. Like let's say you have working for a company, and now you have something called as resource hierarchy. What do you do with the resource hierarchy, guys? You report to your manager. Manager will report to your manager. Your manager report to another manager, right? So like that, management groups provides a level of scope level description, subscription. That means this is my subscription. It will be above my subscription. That's called subscription. Management groups. On top of management groups, we have root. When we say root, right, it is nothing but what? Tenant. Right? So my tenant will have management groups. My management groups will have subscription. My subscription will have my resource groups, and my resource group will have resources. So what is the purpose of this hierarchy? If I put a policy here, right, then it will all inheritance to your subscription and it inheritance to your resource group. So target policy and spend budgets across subscription and inherit them down the hierarchies, right? Implement compliance and cost reporting by organization. That means I can implement the services, I can implement the policy, and the compliance and other stuff taken care with the help of this management group. So to prevent changes, any application, I have apply resource log at the subscription, resource group level and resources. What is that, guys? That is nothing but your resource logs, right? So this we will see the lab, so one by one. Now, when you come to apply service resource tagging. So let's say whenever you visit some shopping, right? What do you guys do? You see the tagging, right? You see the tagging, right? So in the tagging, you will see the price of that particular dress and you will buy it, because that dress will give you a overview that okay, this is like I have joined and I know that this particular shirt has a tagging and it shows the price tag. Same thing in Azure, there is something called a tagging, right? It provides what metadata of your Azure resources. So what is the purpose of resource tagging here? It will logically organize the resources. It will have name value pair. That means the owner of that particular resource and what is the department and what is the environment. So this will help me to roll in the information. That means, for example, if I want to, let's say this is my owner, let's pull the report for owner who is Joe and what is the costing, what is the bill for that particular owner. It gives you very easy. For example, you buy 10 shirt and what biller does is they'll scan the tag, right? And they'll come to know what is the cost. Same thing, you can tag to multiple resources. Let's say he is the owner, he is having multiple resources, but I'll include the tagging so that when he pull the billing, all the tags which he owns, you'll get a billing. Simple. That will be a beneficial if you use resource tag. Now, when it comes to a costing, right? Where I will pay the cost, how I can optimize the cost, because costs are resource specific. One resource will be East US, one resource will be in West US. That resource specifically you have to check it. So what I'll do to check this, I'll use something called as calculator. So if you go back here, you have something called as Azure calculator. So I want to ensure if I go for virtual machines, I want to make sure that what exactly the virtual machine, right? Let's say I want to select what kind of virtual machine I'm looking for. I'm looking for in East US. I'm looking for Windows machine. I'm looking for OS and standard, and I'm going for so and so machine. So what is the cost here, right? So I can see the costing, and based on the costing, I can implement the resources. I will not go and simply implement the resources, right? I will see what is the usage, how, because it varies from location to location. For example, if you see here, here it gives you 2257. So when I select West US or Central US, can you see the pricing will vary, right? Based on the pricing, you choose it, right? That's what it means here. And costs are inbound and outbound data transfer. Yes, that also differs. Costs are inbound and outbound. Whenever you make sure that inbound, whenever the traffic comes, whenever the things comes, right? Inbound and outbound, there will be a target data transfer differs also, right? So that's why you have to plan based on the location. Prepay with Azure reserved instances. That means, let's say I will book a machine for 3 years as a reserved instances. I'll pay some upfront payment. I'll get a discount around 40 to 60%, right? So when I go with my calculator here, I will select something called as reserved instances. Let's say if I select this machine for 3 years, I'll get 59% discount at one shot, right? And if you want upfront, if I want to pay the upfront cost is this, and you'll get a per year, 3 years, you'll get a discount of 59%, but minimum of 1 year, you have to go for a resort. So when this will helpful, guys, whenever you think that the application will work only for 3 years or 1 year, so you go and reserve the instances. So Azure will give you 59% discount for that machine. So you'll pay only 40% and 69%, 60% you have a discount. Use your on-premises licenses to Azure. See, whenever you migrate from on-prem to Azure, right? You can use the licenses. For example, you might have paid for Windows operating system license, or you might have paid for SQL Server licenses. You can take a benefit of using the Azure hybrid benefit. So whenever you implement, whenever you migrate, there's a tick mark. Use Microsoft benefit licenses. Just a tick mark, right? Optimize with alerts, budgets, and advisory. That means I can see the advisor recommendation in the Azure. What is the recommendation it gives? So this is what the costing. Now, first thing is, if I go to pricing calculator, you know what exactly you will do. Now, if I go back to my portal, portal.azure.com, you know already what is Azure portal. And the moment I log in here, I log in with my password. And once I log in, I'll have, excuse me, portal view. And here, I'll select for subscription. So my tenant will have subscription. And the moment I go to the subscription, you have lots of subscription. For example, if I go back to the subscription, I can add the subscription here. I can select what kind of subscription I require, right? You can select what kind of subscription you want. Everything you can check it for here. For example, if I want standard support, if I want to pay as you go, if I want to MSDN or professional direct services, right? You can just go and select what you want, right? Select an offer, students, a free trial. So free trial, I'm not eligible because I'm using my MSDN subscription, right? Select an offer, right? If I want to learn more about this, you can say what, if I select what app and pay as you go, right? It's all gives you a overview. This offer is built as standard pay as you go rights, except other rights set, otherwise specified in, right? So you have to ensure that which subscription you're going to select. So let's take an example. I've selected my subscription. Now, if I say my subscription, I'll use for billing. What is my billing invoice? Okay, monthly pay, monthly I have to pay the bill, right? And payment methods, partner information, everything it gives you, right? Information about the payment. And when I go to the settings, you have your usage and quotas. You might have seen that. So here I can make sure that I will increase the quota by raising a new request. Azure will not charge you for anything else. They will charge you only when you accumulate, right? Say, for example, I want 20 vCPU in Australia, or let's say a region. So let's say if I select East to West. So I'll select the East to West. I just want to implement the West US, for example, West US, East US. So it depends. It depends where you're going to implement. You're going to select where you want, right? For example, in West US 3. So if I want increase the quota for my standard machines, I can raise it and in new quota request. Enter the quota limit. So in the backend, Azure will increase it. And for example, if I go back to my billing, and you can see something called as cost management. So cost analysis, it gives you what kind of services or resources you have implemented and what is the costing here. It gives you the cost analysis dashboard. So let's say whatever I spent, right? For example, in your postpaid, how many calls you made, what kind of calls you made, whether international or domestic, or how many SMS you sent. It gives you, right? So same thing in Azure, whatever the services I've implemented. For example, Logic Apps I've implemented, it's for 852 rupees. I've implemented something called as firewall. I've implemented something called a virtual machine. I've implemented something called a VPN gateway, storage. So it gives you the exact your analysis, cost analysis, and cost alerts. I can add a rule where it should alert me that okay, this particular services is getting accumulated. What is accumulated per cost? So you have to make sure that okay, you will create an alert so that it will be useful for you when it comes to your alert. So budget, this is my budget, right? So I can predict that budget and I'll implement the budget. This is all in the production. Yes. When you implement, it's on the production where I need to make sure that this is my budget. And if it reaches the budget, I'll get notified, right? So this we will do in the real time. And there's something called as advice recommendation. What is the recommendation you're going to give? Who is that?
I'm sorry.
And you'll get a recommendation, what kind of recommendation you want. So whether it's helpful. So it gives you the recommendation. Since this is like I don't have any recommendation here. In the real time, it gives you recommendation. So Azure Advisor, one update for you guys. Azure Advisor will no longer display aggregate potential year savings being beginning 30th September. So it will not, right? So it gives you a message. Invoices, you can see the invoices. There is something called as resource provider. And in the resource provider, let's say, for example, if I want to implement any resources, take an example of compute. So if it is not registered, you cannot implement the virtual machine. Sometimes some of the services you may face challenge with the implementation. It's simple. Come to resource provider and see what is you're looking for and go and register that services so that you can implement it, right? And there is something called as resource lock. So what is the purpose of resource lock? I don't want someone to delete my any resources. For example, let's take an example. If I go back to a resource group, so first we will create a resource group, a small resource group. Anything you search it in the Azure is either here or you can go to the Blade. This is called Blade. Okay. So let's say on the top of any resource group, you will have subscription. And without subscription, you cannot implement the resource group. Let's say, for example, prod-resource group, the name of the resource group. And for any resource group, you require something called as region. So, and tagging, let's say, this is my production environment. Let's say environment type. Let's say production, right? So owner of that particular thing, let's say Rahul, right? So I will create and so only tagging can be changed. No, nothing else. Okay, once you create, so my resource group is created under East US. So if my resource group location East US is down, then only the metadata will get impacted to other resources. For example, if I want to implement, let's say I'm going to implement a small virtual machine for a lab purpose. I'm implementing, let's say, whenever you implement any resources, it should be a subscription and it should be a part of resource group. Now let me take VM or Linux VM. So I'm going to implement in, let's say, West US. And I'm not going to select any availability zone. So availability zone and other stuff will come in later section. This just I'm just showing you the resource log. Let's say, so I'm going to create it. So you can think that I have created a resource group. It's in where man? It's in the East US. But I've implemented my resources by selecting the resource group, but I implemented the resources on the West US, right? And you can see 3.121 rupees per hour. I'm installing the Ubuntu OS, right? So once it comes up, let's say if my resource group, it's in the East US, but I brought my resources from across the globe, across any region, but I will implement in this, right? And now I don't want to delete the resources. Let's come back that machine once it comes up. So it's creating, right? So meantime, I don't want to delete the resource group. For example, before we go into the subscription, let me put the lock and I'll show you the thing. So the moment I put the lock will be, let's say, no delete. I'll say that strictly no delete, right? So I don't want to delete anyone and I'm just going to put that as the subscription. So let's say, take an example of subscription is your main door, guys. What is that? Your main door. If I put a lock, let's say in the main door of my apartment, I locked it. Can you go inside? No. So that is called subscription level locking. If I lock a small room, people can't go to the specific room. That is called resource group level, right? So if I put a lock at the subscription level, nobody can delete anything in Azure. Let's say if someone is trying to delete, let's say example, they are trying to delete this. Copy this and delete it. The resource group is locked, cannot be deleted, right? So take an example that is at the subscription level. What if someone who put a lock at the resource group level? Let me delete the resource lock here and refresh. I've deleted the lock at the subscription level. Now I'll put a resource lock. Let's say, for example, I'll put a lock at the resource group level. So let me. I'm going to put the lock at this resource group level. No delete. At the resource group level, that means it will be only for particular resource group, right? So let's say, for example, I deleted the lock at the subscription level, correct? If you remember. Now I'll delete the second resource group which I've created earlier. So here, will it delete or will not delete? So because I've not put the lock at the subscription level, it will delete. Because I put only at the specific resource group level. So this resource group can be deleted because I removed the lock from the subscription level. If I put a subscription level lock, nobody can delete any resources of anything in Azure. But you can specifically lock the specific resource group, then other resource group can be deleted or other resources can be deleted. So now, if I put a lock here at the resource group level, I think I put the resource group level lock, right? If someone is trying to delete this particular resource group, let's say if I delete this, you cannot delete because I put a lock at the resource group level for the specific resources. Now, this particular resource group is very, very important. So because my virtual machine is running and all of a sudden someone powered off the machine. Take an example. He cannot delete the resources. Let's say he cannot delete the resources, right? Because I put a lock at the resource group level. But what if someone stopped the machine? it will stop. So I don't want someone to stop or start the machine. For example, let's take an example. This machine is under deallocated state. Due to some reason, I've shut down this machine. Let's say once it goes off. Let's take an example. Some cases, we'll keep the machine stop status. So I don't want someone to start the machine. So what I'll do is, I'm going to put the settings, I'm going to put the lock at the resource level. I'll say that read only. So the moment I put this, anybody who is part of any particular resources, right, they cannot start the machine. Because I'm telling directly that this machine is in the stop state. At any given point of time, do not start the machine, right? But let's take an example, vice versa. The machine should start, but nobody should stop. So what I'll do again, I'll go to the lock, I'll delete the lock, right? And I'll start the machine because I removed the lock at the resource level. Now, the moment I start the machine, and what it does is, it will start. But the thing is, I don't want someone to stop this machine, right? So meantime, I'm going to create another resource group. Let's say prod hyphen prod2 hyphen rg. So let me implement in WestUS2. So now you can see here, I have WestUS2, EastUS2, correct? And let me see whether the machine is running now. What I'll do is, I'll copy this public IP address. I'll log into this machine by using my putty. Accept this. And I'm going to log into this machine. Okay, and I'll type a command called top command because it will not close it. So now the machine is running, correct? So if I put a lock at the resource group level, for example, I don't want someone to stop the machine. So I'll say read only. I'm going to implement this. And now the moment I implement this, nobody should stop the machine. Someone will go to the machine who has the access. So they should not stop the machine. Will it stop? No, because I mentioned that I put a resource log that at the resource level, nobody should delete it or stop it, right? So now one challenge is, my organization wants me to move the resources from one RG, let's say East US, I want to move to West US. So some of the resources are dependent. So as of now, only virtual machine we've implemented. So this virtual machine is running in where? In East US. So if I go back to my virtual machine, where it is running in West US2, correct? So now I want to move the resource group from one RG to another RG. Let's say there is an option called move to another subscription or another to resource group. So I'm going to move that and I'm going to select to the second resource group where I want to move. And now if I'm moving the resources, add resources. So I'll say show hidden also and select all and select the machine. Where I want to move? I want to move from one RG to another RG. And when I'm moving, okay, so I'll just do one thing. I'll select all, move to another resource group. I'll select this, select. Can you see, guys? Can anyone tell me why it is not moving?
Because
locked.
right option is not given. Only read access is provided.
That means I put a lock, right? So what I have to do? I have to go to the resource group. I have to remove the lock, right? Now I have to go and move the resources to my another resources. So I'll select all the thing and select and next. So now I remove the lock, but my virtual machine is running, right? I can see that. Right. So I'm just more just it's getting updated, right? Sorry, app update, right? What is the command? This is Ubuntu, right? Okay, so what is that? Ubuntu update. Yeah, sudo app update. So let me go here. So let's say I'm just updating this, right? So that machine is running, but I'm moving the resource group one resource group to another one. It will not impact the resources. It will just the identity tags will get updated from prod to RG. My resources will be running. They are doing their own task until unless there is some issue with the region, right? So that is the idea behind moving the resource from one RG to another RG. So it will take several minutes, but if my backup is running, if my firewall is associated, if my lock is there, you cannot move because it is a dependent on the resource group. Make sense, guys? Now, Azure policies. So in this, we're going to see how you can implement the policy. What is this Azure policies? Policies create a policy definition, scope, the initiative, and define competencies. This we are going to see now. We will take a break. You want to take a break, or we will complete this and we'll take a break, or we will take a break? What do you say, guys?
Take a break of 10-15 minutes.
Yeah. So we will take a break of timer on stop. So we will take a break of 10 minutes, okay? 15 minutes. We'll say 15 minutes. Okay. Dot. There's a timer clock here. Here it is not taking. Edit. I'll say 15 minutes. So let's save it. Okay, let's start with 15 minutes and come back and we'll start with policies. Okay, thank you. It is not a container here. It is a logical thing, right? So without resource group, you cannot log in anything. You cannot implement any resources. Can you confirm? Are you back with the break?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So when you say it's a free of cost, lock is all free. Lock only who can implement? Lock only can implement by the owner, not with anyone else. So now if you see here, I can move the resources even though my resources are running. Can you see this is my resource, right? So you can move the resources to from one RG to another RG because I cannot rename the resource group. That is the purpose. I'm moving the resource from one resource group to another resource group from East US to West US, right? And only the identity tags gets updated. And with billing cycle, every 1 hour it will be, because as we discussed earlier on the first day, Microsoft charges hourly basis, right? Now it is moving, my resources is running in their own data center, right? Here, the purpose of moving is from one RG to another RG in case if you want to move a wrongly created name or your company decided that, okay, I want to keep those resource group in the East US or West US. So just move it, right? Now you might have seen management group, some hierarchy, Azure hierarchy, right? So what is the Azure hierarchy? Basically, you will have a tenant root group. That's what you have seen, right? You'll have your tenant resource group or tenant root group. So tenant root group. So tenant is whom? Tenant is what, guys? Tenant is nothing but your Active Directory. So under Active Directory, you have something called as a management group. That's the hierarchy, right? You have management group. Under the management group, you have something called as what? You'll have subscriptions. So under subscription, you can create a resource, multiple resource groups. Under resource groups, what you'll do? You'll implement your resources. That is the hierarchy of your hierarchical level. So my tenant will have a resource group, management group. My management group will have my subscriptions. My subscription will have my resource group. My resource group will have resources. Right? So this is the logical hierarchy we do in the subscription, in the environment, Azure environment. So they use this for every services, right? They use this. This is the logical. This is what your Azure is all about, right? So Azure resource groups. On top of your resource group, you'll have subscription. On the resource group, what you can do? You can have your resources. So one subscription, I can have multiple resources. Let's say VM. One resource group can have, one particular subscription can have multiple resource group, right? Firewall, right? So subscription. So what this management group does, it helps, right? It helps you manage what? Access, policy, and compliance for multiple subscription. Let's take an example today, Rohit. I've just mentioned him. Hey, do not create any machine. Let's say this is my dev subscription. And this is my production subscription. I've told him clearly, hey, do not create any machine in the dev subscription. But the moment I came in, I see a big machine associated with this. Big size machine. Because he forgotten. I've told him clearly, do not implement any resources. Do not implement any big size machine under dev subscription. But he forgotten. What to do now, guys? He forgotten. What he will do? That's where my Azure policy comes in picture. So to avoid creation, we can implement something called as Azure policy. See now, if he has implemented, no doubt in that. What you will do, you will delete the virtual machine we created, but still you have to pay the bill, right? Let's say if it is 5 minutes, 10 minutes, doesn't matter. He has to pay for 1 hour, correct? So that's why I want to put a full stop for that. And that's where the policy comes in picture. So when it comes to a policy, what is this policy is all about? Policy is something where I have to consider a service to create, assign and manage policy. That means I have to ensure that he or she should not create any machines under so and so. Because I want to make sure that my organization will have regulation and compliance rules, right? Because so many companies are subject to the regulation and compliance, right? So they want ensure each department implements and deploys resources correctly, right? I don't want someone to implement a big size machine under the dev subscription, right? So that's why I will run something like allow you resource types, allow virtual machine sizes, allowed locations. These are all the use cases that I'm going to attach to the policy so that if someone is trying to run a big machine under the dev subscription, it will be restricted, right? And what this does is it will runs the evaluation scans for non-compliant resources. Take an example. I just make sure that Azure backup should be enabled on virtual machines. If you have not enabled the virtual machines backup for that particular machine, you'll get a message what? As a non-compliant, right? So you have to ensure that you have to take an action, right? So Azure policy comes in picture where you take an advantage of enforcement and compliance. You apply policy at the scale level. When someone says scale level, what do you mean by that, guys? It is at the subscription level, and you take a remediation and take all the compliance, right? So always you have to ensure that this will be followed when you have your hierarchy, right? Enforce and compliance. That means you make sure that this you apply at the scale level and it will be compliance. If they're not maintaining the compliance, then the dashboard, it gives you a non-compliant, correct? So you can apply a scale level, and remediation means real-time remediation, guys. For example, Azure policy will be very important, right? In terms of you run environment which needs, for example, multiple engineering teams or multiple subscriptions or need to standardize. Right? That's why you will enforce this, and they have to manage the regulatory compliance, cost control, security, or design consistency. You have to maintain that remediations, right? So these are the use cases. right? So I'm going to implement this. I'm going to implement this for the lab purpose. What do you do? First, you create a policy, define that, and you will initiate at the scope level. Once you initiate this at the scope level, either this is my management group, you select the management group, then you will select the scope, and you will select, this is an optional. What is this, guys, this symbol? This one? This is subscription, correct? This is nothing but
Resource group.
RG, right? And what you do, you will access the compliance when the moment you implement the scope level. So scope is nothing but your subscription level or scale level. Assign a policy, create a policy, and compliance and remediation task. How I'm going to do? First thing is I'm going to show, this is just an introduction here, guys. Nothing else on the policy in terms of your Azure. So first thing is I'll get into my portal. Now something called as management group. Management group. I just want to show the hierarchy of the management groups, correct? So let's say the moment I get into my management group, I'll create a management group here called NeoSkill. Okay, this is what my management group. And I'm going to say that the moment I create the management group, it should be part of what? A tenant root group, right? So my tenant is this one. Can you see the tenant? What is this? Every services will have a unique ID. So for example, if I say 9F, what is 9F, guys? 80F, what is this ID? 80FCS, that means that is my tenant ID. If I go back to my Entra, tenant is nothing but your Entra, guys. Tenant or directory. Can you see? 80FC 6174. That is my tenant ID. And here in the management group, my tenant root group, that's the main account, right? And I can have my management group. NeoSkill is my management group. What my management group can have, guys? It can have my subscription. So my subscription is under Wipro. So what I'll do is I'm going to move this subscription to my NeoSkill. So I'm going to move to NeoSkill. So NeoSkill is a management group here. And I've just, right? Now what happens? My management group is NeoSkill and I have a subscription called my MST, right? And now I want to put a policy here. So what is that policy is all about? Let's take an example. Anybody who has the access, they can create any machines. And I don't want that to be happened in my organization. Everyone has to strictly follow the traffic rules. Traffic, you have to obey the traffic rules, right? Same thing, everyone, either is a owner or whatever, he has to follow the traffic rules, right? In the same thing, he has to make sure that he will follow the Azure policies to ensure that the compliance and he will meet the regulatory compliance, right? So for that, there is something called as policy. Just select that policy. Now you can see here, and this is the policy I've put it here. One is your cloud benchmark. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete all this. Once you delete any policies, it will take 30 minutes to take effect. I'm going to delete this also. So what I'll do is, there is list of definitions. And here you will have the definitions. For example, let's say I want to restrict a location. So I'll allow the location and this will be under the JSON format. And you can assign a policy at the scope level. If I select this, it will select a tenant group, and under the management group, I'll select the scope level. Resource group is an optional, right? For example, I can select my resource group as an optional. If I put a subscription, it will inherit all the resource group and resources. But optionally, I can select only particular resource group where no one should configure. So I just want to see only a subscription level. And what is the policy definition here? It should be allowed, right? What is that allowed? Let's say only allow East US. So that's what my policy. I'm enforcing that policy, and I'm going to create an allowed location. Okay, I've selected East US, East US 2. Only that should be working, and other location nobody should try, right? And I'm going to click. So I can put a tagging also, I can create it. So now the moment I put this, whatever assigned a policy, so that policy will exist here. Even what I'll do, I will select that configure backup on a virtual machine without a given to recover service world with the default policy. Example, I can align this also, or backup is mandatory. So backup is allow backup, right? Enable backup or Azure backup, configure backup on the virtual machine, or Azure backup should be enabled for so and so. I just want to do anything. Backup should be enabled on the virtual machine. So I'm just putting a rule that, hey, today you're going to follow this, otherwise you'll get a non-compliant email, right? So I have to make sure that you will enable the backup. The parameters, all this, and create it. So now the moment I put the backup, if I go to the compliance, I'll see what kind of compliance I have. So you can see that it will start. It will give you an option, right? At the moment allowed location is enabled after 15 minutes. So you cannot implement any resources. For example, someone is trying to create a resource group under different location. Take an example. Let's say RG-prod, and they will select something called as West US 3. See, it will work now, but it will not work later. Why? Because it takes 15 minutes to take effect. 5 to 15 minutes. Right. Meantime, I'll just implement one more policy that the only size of the machine should not be a, let's say, allow virtual machine sizes SKUs. I'll assign this policy and I'll mention that allow only B series machine. Take an example, or D series machine. Nothing else it should work. Only a D series machine. Let's say D. So let's say, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just this particular machine. Apart from this, they should not select anything. So I'm going to create that. And again, it will take 15 minutes. So here I've implemented the policy at the scale level, and I can see that compliant, you can see allowed location, non-compliant, so I have to take proper action, right? So here I've just put this. Now if someone is trying to create a virtual machine, because non-compliant is coming, because why? Because I've already running in West US, right? So if I select a resource group, for example, I'll select this. I'll select, let's say West US 3. And let's say can you see allowed location? And if I click on the policy definition, it gives that only the East US 2 is allowed. Even if I select, okay, let's take an example, East US. Now that is passed. Now if I go to a virtual machine sizes, if I select anything else, for example, if I see a select, if I select B series, it should get a message, because after 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because I've allowed only D series machine, correct? So it should not allow B series machine here. Only, see, for example, if I can select any machines now, right? But I want to make sure that only the D series, only which I've selected, that should work, not the all the things, right? So I should get a error that no, it will not give you an option to select itself. It will be a grayed out, right? Let's wait. Usually it will take 5 to 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes 15 minutes, right? So when you see the sizes, it should go, it'll come as a message that the policy is implemented. So I just go and refresh it. The machine. Still not taken. So what time we have to? So it will take some time to implement. Here it will give you only the D series which I have selected, and rest is policy blocked. That's what the message comes. So let's see. Now, meantime, we can see other stuff. Configure role-based access control. What is this, guys? Role-based access control. In the on-premises, it is also same thing called RBAC role. If you're in the on-premises, right? How are you going to secure your Azure resources, such as your virtual machine, websites, network, storage, right? Because it's a critical function for any organization, if you trust me, using the it's cloud, right? So your company wants to ensure your data and your assets are protected, correct? But still grant your employees and partners the access they need to perform their jobs, correct? So you decide based on the role, you need to ensure that assets are protected, but still users can access the resources they need. So what you do based on the rule, you're going to create based on the role which they play. For example, one guy will be an administrator, one guy will be an what? What, guys? He can be an owner, he can be an administrator, he can be a virtual machine administrator, he can be an, right? So that whenever you have such kind of environment, right, you will get something called as RBAC. So RBAC will be used when you grant a permission, right? For example, based on the role, you're going to grant a permission, right? That's what your RBAC comes in picture. So now what happens here is, let's wait. I just want to show that so that you will get a clarity on that. Like this. You should not allow the machines, guys. Size. I've selected only D series, right? It should not allow. It's taking time to give that message. So meantime, if I want to do a vertical scaling, horizontal scaling, that will be a later part. Vertical scaling, if I go to the machine, that's called network to have sizes. Let's say this is my machine, right? And here, if I want to resize it, I will resize to a 16 GB. I'll resize it. So this is called vertical scaling, guys. Can you see? What is the message you're getting? If you want to resize it, but I'm not allowing that because there's a policy. So what I can resize now? Only the D series machine, because my policy is already blocking me. So can I do this? Because I've not selected that machine series. Can I do this? No, because I've not selected that particular machine. So whatever the available machine, you can select as a, so same thing, if you go back to your virtual machine when you're creating, so it gives you only one thing, that the sizes, right? And here it is not taken effect still. But if you select, still it is not taken from here, but it is taken for your resizing. That means your vertical scaling, right? Horizontal, here still it is not taken the effect. So it will take some time. So when it comes to your RBAC, so RBAC is not specific only to your organization. For example, it is applicable for everything. It is applicable for your what is that? Not only for your organization. It's for everyone who is having the RBAC, right? So RBAC is just whenever you have a permission based on the role. For example, I am an owner or I am an administrator. I am going to give that access to you so that you will log in and you're going to control, right? So let me go back here. Take an example how this RBAC works. Role-based access control. So take an example. Role-based access control. So what I do first, I'll go to my Entra ID, connect. So what I'll do, I'll create some users, correct? So I have to create a users. So on top of my Entra ID, so what I have to do is I will create a users, correct? This is my Entra ID. Let's see, I have users, user one. Let's take an example, user one. Let's say user two. Let's take user three. Take an example, three users. Okay. So let's take an example, three users. So now this user, let's say user one at, let's say control.com. Let's say second user, user two at contoso.com. And third user, user three at contoso.com. And these users are part of my Entra ID, correct? Entra ID. Now, you have something called as Azure subscription. Okay. Here, you have subscription. The person who has the subscription deploy under him. Take an example, user one. The subscription is deployed under him. Just a note for you guys. The person who has the subscription, okay, deployed under him he is called what? Account admin. Take an example, user 1 who is having the subscription access and he is the account administrator. So what Azure does is, the moment he is an account administrator, right? Azure in the back end, by default, user1@contoso.com, right, will have a RBAC role called as what? Owner by default. You'll have owner by default at the subscription level. At subscription level. And what, guys? At the resource intra level, by default, he will be an global administrator. So that's why you will have owner privilege when it comes to RBAC. When it comes to AD role, you will be a global administrator role. So what is his owner rule? Owner gets, guys. Owner basically owns the subscription, access any resources, create any resources, delete any resources, and he has read, write access to resources. He can perform access management, right? And he can give access to any resources. For example, the user 1 is an owner, right? And user 2 logs in, let's say he is a contributor now. Take an example that he is a virtual machine admin. Okay, he joined as a virtual machine administrator. So what do? You create a user, correct? And now you have to give the access. But who will give the access to the subscription? Only owner can give the access. So he's a virtual machine administrator. His ID is created on the Entra ID. Now he wants to create a virtual machine. He has to take care of the subscription. So he will get the access. Only owner can provide access to the user 2 as virtual machine administrator. Only owner can give, right? So let's take an example. In a company, you will not keep only one owner. Owner means not that owner, guys. Owner is a role. It's a highest privileged role, right? Now, let me say that this guy as a contributor, he joined as a equivalent to owner, but his role is a contributor. Now, if we approach this guy who has the already a subscription access, not possible, guys. Right? So when it comes to owner, only the owner can grant him an access. Only owner can grant him as a contributor. Now question comes, okay, contributor can do everything. Contributor is equivalent to owner. But you will have read permission for Microsoft authorization. Give me 1 minute. So I'll share the attendance link. One sec, guys. I'll share the attendance link. Last week you got it right, attendance link. Give me 1 minute. I'm gonna give the attendance link to you guys.
Video links are also required. I did not find the recordings till now.
Now that you see it in the chat. You can just see it in the chat. We have sent in, I sent in the chat. You didn't get the in the chat?
No, actually, you can reshare the links of last 2 and 2 days also.
That is later, not now. Later. I'll give you something called as attendance URL. So attendance URL will remain same. Please keep the attendance URL. Attendance URL. Where is the attendance URL here? Give me 1 minute. This place will send so much thing and guys, always I'll send it in the WhatsApp group. Please see the WhatsApp group recordings. So here I will not send it. I will send only in the WhatsApp group.
You have created any WhatsApp group?
Not me.
Yes.
Are you new to the class?
No, I was there, but I am not part of any WhatsApp group. That's why I am asking.
Okay, you can check it with Meenakshi or New Skills.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure, I'm not an admin. So they will create your WhatsApp. Okay, just so this is the attendance URL. I sent it in the group. Meantime, I'll send it here also. What's your name actually?
Amresh.
Amresh. Okay, I will check with Meenakshi or New Skills. Okay, just yeah, I sent you in the group. Please go and click on that, and you can say that module 2 going on. So when you click on that link, you'll get in here and candidate name, and you can say the training module is module 2. Governance and compliance. Okay. Fine. So now when it comes to here, the contributor and owner, because they are very similar to each other. They are very similar. But what is the difference between my contributor and a RBAC? So you will have read permission. That means, but you will have read, not a person, guys. You will have read permission. Read permission. For what? For Microsoft authorization. Now keep in mind, when it comes to RBAC, first we'll compare the RBAC to Entra ID roles. Role definition, role assignment, authorization, authentication. Now when it comes to RBAC, what is the RBAC does? RBAC provides fine-grained access management, manage access to the Azure resources. Scopes can be specified at the multiple levels. information can be accessed. That means your role information can be accessed through your portal, through CLI, through your PowerShell, through your resource manager template or REST APIs. But when it comes to AD role, which we have seen last week, that's called Entra roles. Entra role is nothing but specific to your Entra ID object only, a global administrator at the tenant level, right? This is at the subscription level. This is at the tenant level, right? Role information can be accessed in portal, your 365 admin portal, your graph, and the Azure Active Directory. So there are built-in roles. You can create your custom role. That means I can create my custom role as well, right? See, for example, Asha is playing multiple role, right? Instead of giving owner role, she is playing administrator role and she is playing another role. So what I'll do, I'll create a custom role for that, correct? And here is what happened when it comes to your contributor. So we'll give example of contributor first. So let's take an example. First is ensure that this is my role, right? RBAC. So RBAC role is associated what, guys? At the subscription level, at resource group level, and at resource level. RBAC can be associated at so and so level. At the subscription level. So let's say I've given access as a subscription level. What you can do, you can have access to your resource group level and resources, right? So if I provide resource group level only to the specific resource group, you will have access. But if I give resource access only to the resource, you will have RBAC role, right? So if you assign at the subscription level, example, if the role is assigned at the subscription level, it will inherit resource group level and resources. Correct? So that is what. And if I assign at the resource group level, it will not inherit. It will inherit only resource group. It will inherit only specific resource group. And resources. If role is assigned at the resource level, it will, if the role is assigned at the resource level, it will not inherit. It will be only specific to resources. Usual resources. For example, before we getting into the practical, I want to give the difference between your contributor, reader, your owner, right? But you should know, okay, if I select this, for example, if I go back to my portal, let's say at the resource level means I'll go to the individual resources and you have access control, right? So for the individual resource, if I give, but if I give you at the resource group level, here it will be empty because we moved the resource to one resource group to another resource group, if you remember, right? And if I go to the IAM, this is specific to this particular resource group, right? If I go back to my subscription, so subscription will inherit your resource group and resources. So here, as an owner, I can see add role assignment, co-administrator, and custom role. But let's take an example. If I give an access, before we get into that, how does this role works? So take an example. You have your Microsoft Entra ID. Let's say this is looks good, or okay, let it be this one. Entra ID. Tomorrow I'm going to ask question about today, so that it will be we are in sync. Now let's say, take an example. You have contributor and owner. Let's say this is my owner and this is my contributor. Owner, highest privilege, owner. Contributor, we'll talk about, we'll give you the difference. Contributor. Now here, there is something called as resource. Let's say Microsoft Compute, Microsoft, let's say storage, right? Or we can say something called as storage, something called as your network, something called as your authorization. So Microsoft dot compute, Microsoft dot network. I've shown in the morning where you can see all this, guys. I've shown you in the morning. Microsoft for storage. Let's say Microsoft for authorization. Where have you seen this? This is nothing but resource provider. Where I can see the resource provider? At the subscription level. You might have seen in the morning subscription, I've shown the subscription, right? Let me show that as well, no issues. You should know by seeing the diagram, you should understand what we are talking about. Okay. Now, if he is a owner, all this you will have full permission. Okay. But when it comes to a contributor, so for owner, read, write, and delete will be there for all the services, including this. Okay. So, but when it comes to a contributor, he will not be same like your owner. Because he is a contributor, he will have full permission of everything. He can delete the virtual machine, he can create the virtual machine, he can delete the resizing or whatever he can do it. But except this one, guys. That means he will have only read access. For example, no user access, no user management. He cannot provide access to anyone else, though he is having a contributor role. He cannot delete the lock, no deletion of locks, no deletion of logs. Policy, he cannot create a policy, he cannot delete the policy, no deletion of policy, no creation of, so he cannot do that because he is not having the authorization thing, right? So that's why contributor will play everything, but when it comes to, see, the collection of permission, that list operation can be performed. Owner, contributor, reader, is all the RBAC roles, right? And action, what you're going to do, delete, write, and so you will have restrictions when it comes to contributor, because you will not have a permission for the authorization. Authorization, delete, and you will have only reader access. This is what the role assignment. So when you create a role assignment, process of binding a role definition to the user, service principal, scope, the purpose of granting access. So this we will see on the, either you go at the subscription level, or role assignment you can do individually, or what kind of role definitions, owner, contributor, reader, all these are definitions. So when you assign that, where you want to assign, to whom you want to assign, you can assign it, right? And what are the authentication? You have your enter ID, you have your RBAC. So enter ID roles, global administrator is a highest privilege, where he will take care of the tenant. He can create a user, he can grant a global administrator role to someone else, right? But and when it comes to your RBAC, owner will be the highest privilege, right? And contributor, reader, and these are the some of the AD roles, right? So this is how the authentication is happening. He should be a part of the tenant, and he should, if he wants to create a user, he should be a global administrator. And in the root management group, if he wants to create a management group, if you want to create a resource group, resources, he should be a part of your RBAC role. Either it can be an administrator, or owner, or contributor, or a reader, and he can take care of the account, right? So this is all the RBAC. So when it comes to RBAC, when it comes to AD, so first what I'll do, I'll create a small user. Let's say I'm going to create a small user, a normal user, whatever we call it as. So I'll just create a user. Let's say test RBAC user. Okay. I'm just testing the user, and let's say Prasad. New. So I'll copy this password. Guys, tomorrow I may complete at 11:30 or 12 o'clock. Okay, so one module tomorrow. So today we are going to see, because tomorrow I have the blood camp, blood donation camp. So 1 hour before I'll give you a time, and next week I'll continue for another hour, so that we are in a very good phase, because we have covered very good. So no issues. So I'm going to create a user here. So I've created a user. Now this user doesn't have anything. He has created in this particular enter ID, and I've not given any access so far, correct? So where is the user? This is the user. So I'll copy this user. What he will do, he will go and log in with incognito window, portal.azure.com, and he will have the ID, which we have given the ID. For the first time, what he has to do, guys? He has to do go with the ID. And he has to change the password, otherwise it will not work. So once you have this ID, he is a normal user, correct? So what you will do, you will try to get into the enter ID. And it is restricted because he is not a global administrator, he is not any role he has. Now he wants to create a virtual machine also. He will go to the virtual machine and he doesn't have anything. If he tries to go to the subscription, right, he doesn't have anything here, correct? But how I will get the access for him? Now, when I go back here, let me go to the user. For example, what is the best way to give the global administrator role, guys? For him, let's say, for example, he is my colleague. He joined with the administration team and he will take care as a global administrator. He is a global administrator. So the best way is you have to create a group. For that group, you have a policy called what? Assigned policy, assigned role, which is global administrator. Always create a group, assign a permission to the group and add the user. Do not give the role directly. You might have learned on the first, right? If I go back here, go to the groups, create a group, and that group will have a owner access, contributor, what is that? Global administrator. For example, security group, let's say new admins. So I'll go with here I'm not getting why, guys, because P2 licenses, right? So what do? You'll assign a permission to that particular group, add the user. So you will get a respective access, right? For example, my administrators. I don't have any license here. That's why it is giving an option. So you can directly go create a group, assign a owner, the global administrator role to the group. And once you've add the member to the group. Do not give any time direct access, right? So for example, how I say direct access is if I go to the user, right? If I go to this user, refresh it. This user, right? Manage assigned role, add an assignment. So basically you should not do this. Since I'm doing here because I'm just showing that if he is the administrator, what happens, right? So he can take care of so the moment I refresh, you will have access to the enter ID because he is a global administrator now, right? He can go and delete anything, users, anything, right? So now you can see what is the role assigned to him. You can see here itself as a global administrator. So global administrator is the highest privilege where he can do the creation of users or whatever. But still, if he wants to create a subscription, if he wants to create a resources, he doesn't have anything. So that's why you'll get the RBAC role. So what I'll do, I'll go back to the user and I'll just go here, subscription. You will have something called as subscription. Go to the access control IAM and add role assignment. So what kind of role you want to do? For example, if it is a privileged administrator, he is also a contributor. Take an example, contributor. So let's say test user, I'm going to give as a contributor. What kind of contributor he is, what kind of permission he has. When I go to the view details, you can see all this. So especially for authorization, everything you will have only the authorization, Microsoft authorization, you will have read permission. So if I go here, can you see here? All this as read because you don't have write permission. For example, if you see a role assignment, if you see a policy definition, policy exemption, deploy the deploy action, policy action, or delete a resources, you will not have eligible. He is a just a read access. But when I go to owner access, if I go to the view owner, if I say authorization, this is very important. When you know this, you will run the show, right? So when it comes to authorization, you see it? Read, write, delete, all things will be there for the owner. So take an example. This guy is a contributor. So what I'll do, I'll just go this and next. So now I have to select the member. Who is the member you want to give the contributor access? So best practice is give to the groups, not the individual user, right? So I'll just select this individual user because test this guy and review and assign. So now what is happening is I've given as a global administrator role. Meantime, I've given access as a contributor. Now what he will have? He can create a users, any users, not an issue, but he cannot give any access to any users because he's a contributor on terms of RBAC. On terms of AD, he can do anything because he has a global administrator role, right? So when I go back here, meantime, when anybody who owns the subscription, what kind of access, what he will be, guys? He will be an account administrator, correct? Where I can see that? Can you see here? The one who owns the account or a subscription, he will be an account administrator by default. He will have owner access. But now I've given a contributor access to user too, right? So he will go to that, he will refresh his portal and you will get something called as subscription. And what is that? Role. Specified access. So whenever you specify access, whenever you see that, that means you should think that this user is a contributor, right? So what you can do, for example, if you go back to, let's say one virtual machine was there, right? So if he goes and let's say if we stop the machine, he can stop the machine because he has that rights, right? So, but when he goes to your subscription, when he goes to the subscription, he can see all this, everything. But when he goes to the resource logs, he will not have permission. He cannot edit the logs. Meantime, if we go to the policy, if he goes to the compliance, so whether he can delete this, no. It's a restricted one. He cannot create the policy also. He cannot create. He can stop the machine, that he has a rights. But he cannot, if he goes to the definitions, if he select any of one of this, let's say Azure Monitor, assign a policy, he cannot do that. Let's say just a create. You don't have the, can see here, you do not have Microsoft authorization, policy assignment, write permission over the scope. That means you are not authorized person, right? Meantime, if he goes back here, if he cannot put a lock, he cannot do anything, correct? So now what I'll do, I will make this guy as a owner. Because I want to, meantime, if he goes to the subscription, he wants to give access to someone else, right? Let's say IAM. Role assignment is grayed out. Right? He cannot do anything. He cannot go and delete any users, anything from the, for example, he wants to delete this user, he will have delete option is grayed out for him, right? But let me make him a administrator, as a owner. So let me make him as a owner. So this is my idea. Let me make him as a owner. So I'll go to that. I'll just go to the role assignment. And he has already a contributor, but I will just make sure that he is a administrator. So in real time, we will not give it to the individual user, we'll give it to the group. So allow user to assign only assigned selected roles to the principal. Allow, we can say the second one, or we can allow users to assign all roles highest privilege. So I can say full permission to him. Okay. So this is how you assign. Now, if we refresh his screen, this is specified access, correct? Once I refresh, what will be the role here? The role will be a owner. See? Right? So now he can go and do whatever he want. For example, he will go to the policy, he'll go to whether I can run there, delete. Yes, he can do that because he's a owner now. And he can delete it, he can do whatever you wish. He can go to the subscription, he can put a lock, he can go and go to the IAM, he can assign someone else policy, someone else access. He can do that, he can create a custom role, he can bind the multiple roles and specify to the users. He can do because he has a owner role. Make sense, guys? Make sense? So, and here you can go and do whatever you wanted. So this is how the role works in real time. And what you're going to do the lab, you're going to manage the subscription, Azure policies. You're going to implement the management group. You're going to create your Azure role and create a custom role and manage it. Policy, you're going to create a policy. So what you do today, create an account, get a free trial, but you have to enter your credit card information. And module 3, we will talk about module 3. In the module 3, it's very simple, guys. We don't have any big in module 3. Module 3 is just how are you going to set up your environment using your tools. For example, in this module, we're going to use give me 1 minute. So in this module, we're going to see how manage thing resources, introduction to PowerShell, introduction to Bash. Nothing else in this, guys. We are not going to talk about what is PowerShell. We are not going to talk about what is Bash. In exam, you don't get it. You should have knowledge on those environment in real time. Why it is coming like this? I just want a full screen. Guys, in this, you have how you can manage the resources in Azure portal. How are you going to use PowerShell? How are you going to use the Bash? And something interesting topic is ARM template. So we will complete this because this is a small module, guys. This is a small module. So when it comes to your configuring Azure resources, first I will advise you to go to the portal. And once you are familiar with the portal, right, you have to go with the PowerShell and CLI. Get those things in a much better way. Once you know the portal, once you know the UI, then go to the PowerShell and explore the things. Do not go directly PowerShell, right? So in this module, we're going to learn about how you can compare your tools, portal, Cloud Shell, and the link. So when the portal, you can see something called as a portal, which is azure.portal.azure.com, that you can view, manage resources, visual interface, unit of training and documentation, personalize your experience, mobile app. You have a mobile app of Azure portal as well. You can install by going to the Play Store, try portal. You'll get portal access to your mobile also. You can access the Cloud Shell. You don't need to install any PowerShell or a CLI in your environment, right? You have one of creation scenarios. So the moment you have your portal, in the portal, what you do, guys, the moment you log into the portal, right, you will have a blade where you search for all the blades here, or you can search it here if you want to implement any resources. And here we call it as a directory. You can switch the directory to anyone, right? Either you can switch the directory, or if I switch the directory, because it's an independent tenant, correct? It is an independent tenant. It's not like your on-premises where you can link all the three. No, it is an independent tenant. And here you can see something called as notification, where I implement that, and where I can see all the notification, I can see the notification. And here something called as Cloud Shell. So in order to implement your Cloud Shell, in the Cloud Shell, Azure is given an option, PowerShell and Bash file. So in order to implement that, first you need to have a storage account. So let me go and delete this storage account. I'm gonna delete this storage. Now I've deleted that. So in order to use your Cloud Shell, you need to have a what? You need to have a storage. That's why I'm deleted. I just want to show that. So the moment you click on here, you want to go with the Bash or PowerShell. So I'll say that, okay, PowerShell, mount a storage account. I'll select my subscription and apply it. Okay, I'll say that, okay, you create a storage for me. So I'll select next. So what Azure does is, they will select a storage for me. They'll create a storage for me. You may get an error because I've deleted the location, right? Okay, it takes 30 minutes sometimes. So it's created. So the storage account is created. And why storage account is required for Cloud Shell? To store the metadata, right? So now you can see this PowerShell. So you can just integrate the PowerShell here, or you can go back to the bash file, where if you are good at Linux, you can use CLI, right? So now, when it comes to your PowerShell, Cloud Shell you have, and PowerShell and CLI you can use it. In the Cloud Shell, it's a built-in in the Azure portal itself, but Azure PowerShell and CLI you can implement in your machine also, right? Interactive browser accessible, offers bash and or PowerShell, authenticates automatically, provides one session per user basis, temporarily times out after 20 minutes. If you leave as it is, it will time out after 20 minutes. But when it comes to your Azure PowerShell and CLI, command line programs, interactive and scripting mode, cross-platform, good for repeatable deployments, familiar coding experience, right? That's what you do in the PowerShell or CLI. But when it comes to, they have not given anything there, guys, here. So let's take an example. Azure PowerShell. Here, if I go to the tutorials, so let's say I want to create a small virtual machine using the PowerShell. First, what do? You have to sign up with the account. I'll just sign up with the same account, not an issue. And I have a admin privilege. Let's keep it. So now I'll begin here. So it will check with the account, which account you want to go. I'll say PowerShell. I already mounted, right? Okay, let me sign in, sign out. So which is functioning, where you want to implement? I'm just saying implement on the same directory. So I'll switch it to PowerShell because I'm doing for PowerShell. Here, I'll copy this command. And what this command is all about, create a new resource group, name called tutorial resources, and location is there. So I'm just going to here and enter. So what is happening? It created something called as a new resource group, name called tutorial. And next is, on top of my resource group, install something called as a machine. So when you want to implement a machine, you have to have what? You need to have a username and password, correct? So username is what? Tutor admin, they have given as tutor admin. And password, I'm going to give my own password. So this is created. Now they're asking us to create a virtual machine. Size of the machine is D2V3, right? Copy this and paste it and enter. What it does is they will create a resource, a virtual machine on top of your resource group. So go back here, go to the resource group. You might see that, refresh it. You can see that tutorial. And here tutorial resources. Right here, they are installing the machine. Make sense? So can you see that? What is that option, guys? SKU is not allowed. What is the SKU, guys? I've restricted the right size. Correct. I've restricted the size, right? Size is, so I've deleted the policy, but still it is not taken. Right? For example, if I go to the policy, allowed virtual machine size. So what I'll do is, I'll edit the assignment, right? And parameters. I will select what is the machine they're asking to do. DSV3. I'll just allow this, save it. But again, it will take 15 minutes, right? If you delete also, it will take 30 minutes to take effect. But I've just made it as, I've just allowed this, right? I'll copy this again and I'll say, go this. But here, instead of here, what I can say, if it gives you same error, I will change the size. Let's see. If it says the same thing, then we can select the size as a nearby. Okay. Are you getting it, guys? Are you getting it?
Yes, yes.
So what is that? It's already created, right? If you see here, you can see here, the VM is created. Why? Because I've allowed the size, correct? I've allowed the size to create it. Now, what is the next step here? Next step is, if I copy this and the new size, and it will give you the options, right? What is the size of the machine? So now, how to get information about the machine? So the moment I run this, it will give you the information about the machine. And you can see you want to create another machine, a new machine on the same. Let's say if I run this command, it will give you the IP address of the machine. And now I just want to get the public IP address of this machine. And this is the public IP address of this machine. So if I want to take a control of that machine, I'll copy this. What I'll do, I'll just go to the remote access control here. So I can take the control, right? I can go here. Let's say tutor admin, correct? Tutor admin. It's called, what is the username here? Yeah, tutor admin is the username. Okay. So login as tutor admin and password is I can take a login, right? So without getting into the portal, without creating it, we are using PowerShell to build a network, right? Build a virtual machine. So this is one way. So other way is you can use the CLI and do the thing, right? But you have to do step by step, correct? You have to do the step by step, and you have to do it step by step. This is the, so I'm just going to delete that. So you have to do step by step, correct? You have to create PowerShell step by step. And so in order to do, if you want to do multiple things in one thing, that is where you're getting something called as ARM templates. What's that? Resource, configure your resources using your ARM templates. Azure Resource Manager templates. So anybody knows JSON here? JSON. So everything
Yes.
is, if you know JSON, this is your bread and butter for you, right? Because you can create your own JSON and you can use it. And you can consider Bicep also. This is another level where you will implement to your, but here it is not there. It just like they're given. You can use that also. And using the template parameters. So what is the use of this ARM template, guys? So let's take an example. In this diagram, it's a very good diagram. You have your ARM template. Let's say I've used my, for environment is running up, and now I want to use the same environment. I want to deploy this because it's a critical environment. Let's take an example. I want to move to the production here. It's possible. What you do, you download the template and you'll upload the template in the production, right? But the problem here is I've used for development. What kind of issues comes when I move to the production? Take an example, username. Take an example of password. Take an example of location. Take an example of the machine size, right? Or OS. So that you have to define it, right? So that's why it gives you improvement. It improves consistency and promotes. You can reuse the same template. And what is the use of that? It will reduce the manual. You don't need to go and click create manually. It will be error prone. Yes, because the same location I'm going to implement on the other one. And it is a repetitive task, right? So express complex deployments. Yes, it's very difficult to implement that environment. So what I'll do, I'll use the template, I'll download the template, I'll upload the file. Simple. And express requirements through a coding. Yes, right? Anybody knows CloudFormation in AWS? Same thing in Azure is ARM template. And it provides requirements through your coding, provides validation task, right? Modular can be winged also. And it is very simplified the orchestration. You just go create a custom template and upload whatever you want, and your environment is ready, and you can download that particular thing and you can upload to another location. Simple, right? So that's why instead of using one by one like PowerShell or a CLI, you use the ARM template, upload that file, your environment is ready, right? And what is that environment? It's all on the JSON format, right? The schema, this is my schema. This remains same schema, right? And when it comes to your JSON, you define all the resource manager resources in the deployment, which is written in the JSON. And it is a collection of your key and value pairs. And each key is a string here, right? Each value can be a string, number, Boolean expression, or a list of values, right? The moment you write a JSON format, upload that file, and your environment is ready. This is the parameters. See, as I mentioned, when you are using a development environment, when you are moving to the production, the username and password, I should be a different name, right? And I should consider, I can't use the development username and password because this is a production environment. And I don't want to see the size of the machine. For example, you have used small scale in the machine in the development environment, but I don't want that. I want to use a big scale machine, right? So that is where I'll configure as a parameters, right? So what is this parameter? Specify which values are configurable when the template runs. The moment I upload the template, which one you want to as a parameters. For example, one of the virtual machine username and password. I cannot use the development system, right? I want to use my own ID and password for production environment. That's where the parameters comes in, right? And consider bicep file. This is like external one where you can implement your with the JSON and you can integrate with your Azure. So simpler syntax for writing templates. Smaller module files can be, say you can reference from the main template, automatically detects dependency between your resources, right? Visual Code extension with validation that you can use it and you can integrate. And you should know about DSL here in this DSL language, right? This is just an introduction here in terms of, and I can use the template. For example, let's say Guru or Pratad, I don't know about the template. It's okay. You get a quick template from the gallery, right? You can deploy a JSON or your bicep template. You have your ready-made templates. You have a lot of templates, guys. You don't need to sit and make implementation of your JSON, right? This is all the module 2. It's very a small module, guys. When it comes to you'll introduce one by one in terms of PowerShell or CLI. But when you go into the portal for your ARM template, it's very simple. Let's take an example. Deploy a custom template. Search for deploy a custom template. And here, I want to build my own editor. So what I'll do, I'll just click on here. Now, this is the schema. This you cannot change. If you change this, it will never work. Okay. So let's say I want to load a file. Example, I have a file. I can load it. Or I can say, okay, I want to create my own. Let's say, for example, I want to create a small Ubuntu machine. Okay. And what the Ubuntu machine required? Let's say name of the machine. Let's say VM name. Let's say storage account, I need a SA. Why we need to have a storage account name here? Because see what happens here is every storage account is a unique, right? And where you're going to give the storage name, you're going to give here. So what Microsoft does is they will use something called as concat functionality, concat. So what happens here in the concat, the name of the storage account I've given SA, but you know that every storage account is a unique name, right? So what Microsoft does is on top of your name, they will create some unique name, right? So that's what the functionality of concat. And I will say VNet. The moment I click OK, and my thing is ready. That's here. And you can see somewhere concat. If you go to, can you see here concat for storage? Because Azure will create a concat functionality and they will create a machine. So here I may get an error for a machine because there is no standard D1, right? So what I'll do, I'll go back here and this one, I'll select this machine, okay? And I'll go and because you may get an error, there's no standard D1. So I'll just enter this, okay? And save this. Now, always remember that when you want to enable, for example, I want to enable the parameters because I want to make sure that it is part of different location, right? And I have to make sure that the username is different, right? Let's say VM name, let's say a production VM. And username is always different compared to your production and development, right? And that's why they have given this, any blank you see is, it's what? It's called parameters. And you can edit the parameters, you can edit the template, you can visualize what you're doing exactly. You don't go and just implement the code. You just make sure that you know about the resources. You need to enable the template and what kind of visualization you're going to implement. The moment I create, my template is ready, right? And it is deploying the custom template. This is just a first time when you used for the first time, and second time I want to implement the same. I think deployment template SKU, please refer the document. Okay, this is not selecting that particular template. So what I'll do, I will just use here itself. And you can see here, edit parameters. You can see all this and edit template. So this, if you want to edit the template, if you want to change it, you can change it. So here they've taken a standard D2 V3. So anything blank you consider as parameters. VM name you have to give, and administrator password, we will never give the same password, right? We will use our own password, right? So admin username, let's say VM admin. Password, I'm going to use password admin. So I'm not going to use else. VM size, or let's say the OS version, that is called variable, something which never changes. But something you have to see a blank, that is nothing but your parameters. So don't get confused. Parameters, if you see anything blank, where you need to upload, right? Where you need to update. For example, I can't use the username and password which is used for development. No, I don't want that. I want to use something my own, right? And I can't use the same sizes which is used in the development. I want to change it to higher thing, right? So that's what your development comes in. Let's wait. So it will create a simple template, right? So if you have a complicated environment, let's take an example, this complicated environment, this one, let's say this machine is started and I want to use the same environment into a different subscription or a different where I want to implement, right? So what I do, there is something called as export the template. So I want to export this template. I want to implement in other location. So just download the template, which comes as a JSON format, upload the template. So it is generating, it takes some time because the machine is starting now, right? So I'll just go and you can see this machine is running, simple VM, and that machine is deployed, right? And you can see the deployment. Now, if I see in the template, if I want to export this, it takes some time to generate, and you can download the template. You can see here. So download the template, and the template is downloaded to your desktop, and you can extract it, and just extract it. Now what you do, you go to your portal. What you do with the portal, guys? You go to the portal and go to the custom template, right? And just build your own, load the file, simple. Load it. Load the template. And just click save. And your environment is ready. And you can just select whatever the parameters you want, select whatever the region you want, deploy it. Simple, right? And this is how you use, because error proning your manual task, nothing will be there. Is any critical environment where you have so many things where you don't need to go one by one, then you will do custom template. And you can use something called as from the quick gallery. So you can go gallery, you have a lot of things where you don't need to write anything, right? So you have lots of templates. You can see here. And you can implement from the, let's say, you can, I'll just give you the gallery also. Quick template. If I go back here, you can see all this a small gallery, right? And you can see a quick template. So what kind of environment you want, right? So let's say I want a template with Nginx. I want Nginx, and I want how to expose Nginx ingress controller via front door. So if I want this example, guys, I'll just click on this. I'll export this to my JSON, right? So let's or let's say migration. Deploy Azure migration, deploy migration SQL, right? If I say Azure deploy migration SQL or Azure replicate, or we have something called as migration. You can use anything here and you can just deploy to Azure, and you can see deploy to Azure. So it will ask for your ID, where you want to implement. The moment you add it, you will get a parameters directly. Right? You can see the parameters. You can visualize what exactly you're going to do, right? It gives you life easy. You don't need to sit and prepare your JSON. You don't need to sit and, right? Everything is there. It will go for Azure migration services, and it will. So this is the deploy Azure migration DMS, right? And it gives you wherever you see a blank, it is nothing but what? It is parameters. You can edit the template if you want to modify, you can modify, or you want to make sure that the parameters, if you want to edit the parameters, location or whatever parameters, you can edit here itself, or you can edit inside that also, right? Very useful when it comes to your ARM template. So tomorrow we are going to see the module 4. So in this module, you can practice what? Create a Azure manager template and deploy it. And so this is what the you have the lab environment. So what you do with the lab environment, first you create your Outlook account. Then once you create an Outlook account, go to the portal.azure.com, get a free trial, and see, for example, what I'll do is I will remove that user ID. I'll just go, I remove the access, the role assignment. I'll remove that user which I've given, right? Test user. So I'll remove this user. One thing you have to keep in mind, if the user has contributor role, but I've assigned a owner role, right? Owner role will preside his access, right? So now I'm removed it. Now if he logs into his ID, is not have any subscription access, correct? It doesn't have subscription access. You can see here, it will go off. It will go off now because I removed his access. It's gone, right? And you can see all this. So what you do once you create an account, start with the free trial. Once you start with a free trial, try Azure for free. So the moment you have this, it will ask for you to sign up, and I can use the same ID. Okay, here you have to select your name and other stuff, and here you have to agree, and it will go for a payment, right? You have to enter your credit card information. Once you do that, so let me select, let's say, press any ID. Example, guys. So let's say 974. Text me or call me, whatever you do. Company, let's say Microsoft. So PAN card is, so let's say Nagar, Bangalore, Karnataka, 560043. And I'll say agreed. Then I'll say next. So next is what? I need to verify. That's why. Okay, I'll say test me. I'll say new skill exam. Okay, so and I'll verify 626. Just I'll verify 629515. Verify the code, and I'll just next. So here you're going to enter your credit card information, guys. Okay, first 1 month you'll have $200, and for 12 months you'll have free services, and later you have to pay. So popular services free for 12 months, 55 services always free. You'll get a credit to use first 30 days, 13,300. Right? This is what you're going to register your ID. Got it? Got it, guys? So any questions to be answered? So we will see tomorrow. We're going to start with what is Abba? Why Abba is coming in this? Abba is not part of this. Okay, so fine, guys. Any questions to be answered? Any questions to be answered today? Guys, tomorrow we're going to start with module 4, virtual networking. So I'm going to ask you questions today's one, tomorrow, starting 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Then followed by networking module 4. We'll complete module 4 tomorrow and start with module 5. And next week, module 5, 6, 7 complete. And so we are almost good. Any questions? Any questions? Guys, you guys are there or no in the call?
No, sir, as of now.
No question.
Okay.